Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Megan.
How are you? How is your week going?
I'm good. I'm having a great week. This week, I'm not like typically a very big TV person. I think you know that about me now. But this week, it was like everything I'm interested in came out in the last couple weeks. And after my girls have been going to bed, I've been binging all of these fantastic shows by myself.
Good for you.
It all kind of came out at once. But you know what I love about you is we're obviously still learning about each other. And something that's so sweet is you have some pop culture references and then some you don't know. So, like, one of the big things that came out this week is the Vanderpump reunion episode 1, which is this huge scandal is going on. I'm totally sucked in. But I love that a couple weeks ago, I sent you a photo of Sheena, who the world met about 10 years ago when she was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills because she was the mistress to Brandi Glanville's husband. And I sent a photo to you of her, and it was referencing her headphones. And I was like, look at these headphones. And you were so cute. You were like, I love them, but I don't know who this is. And I was like, oh my God, it's Sheena. So
it's true. Yeah, I don't know why, but I do tend to be like out of touch with celebrity news. Like I did know about the Vanderpump Rules reunion though. I have heard about this. This is one that I didn't miss on this one. I knew this was happening. I don't know who these people are. Like I would have to go back and start the season over. And actually it sounds like it's worth doing because everyone is like going on and on about it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, people will say like names all the time and I won't know who that is. Like my husband does this too. He'll say, oh, so-and-so. And I'm like, I don't know who that is.
I love that about you. I think it's fun too because I can tell you about them. So I watched Vanderpump Reunion 1. It was fantastic. And then also this week, Selling Sunset dropped, which I know you mentioned you tried, but you didn't watch. And
I watched the Christina Hall. I watched Tarek's ex-wife. I follow her. I haven't watched the Selling Sunset, which is his new wife, right?
Yes, it's his new wife, Heather. But the season 6 just came out. I binged it in like 3 nights. The storyline is a little like unbelievable, but I wanted to speak to their makeup. Oh my gosh, these girls are so talented, whether it's them doing their own makeup or they have professional makeup artists. Their makeup is phenomenal. Their eyeshadow is so beautiful. They do a lot of like the under eyeliner, which I think I spoke to before. I don't love that, but it's just really beautiful makeup. And I kept zoning in on their makeup and I was like, man, I'm just gonna watch all these episodes because of the makeup and the houses. But it was great. I binged that whole season in a couple of nights. It was fabulous.
Wow. Oh, I'll have to check it out. I do love real estate shows. Those are like some of my favorite shows, and like the shows where they flip houses. I love those too. So I'll check that out. That sounds really good.
Yeah, you should check it out. And then the last one that I watched that I was like, oh, I'm going to save this for the podcast. I want to ask you about. So I watched the Anna Nicole Smith documentary. Do you know who she is? And did you watch it?
I have not watched it. No. I do know who she is, though.
You know who she is. So when I was in college, my girlfriends and I, we loved her show. Loved it. Like, we would go over to the pizza parlor next door to where we lived, and we would sit and watch her show on the big screen. And she was just so cute and so funny. And in retrospect, looking back, it's like, well, obviously she had a lot of issues. But I watched the documentary, and there was a lot of new information about her that I didn't know. And one of them that was so interesting, and I was going to text you, and I was like, I'm going to wait because I want a psychologist's opinion on this, but I'm going to wait for the podcast. So she had told this story her whole life of having this horrible childhood. And I remembered it, like watching her show. It was like, oh, this poor little girl had a horrible childhood. Well, in this new documentary, it came out that her and her mom had filmed something right before she passed away. and she didn't have a horrible childhood. And her mom said, Anna, why are you putting this out there? You had a good childhood. You were loved. We weren't wealthy, but you had your needs met. And she wanted to have this story about her out there. And she kind of had this obsession with Marilyn Monroe, who is known to have a terrible childhood. And then she had a good friend who also had some stories. And it's just interesting that she let the whole world believe something about her that is now just coming out now. It wasn't true. And it wasn't a flattering thing. Isn't that odd?
Yeah, it's odd. It immediately makes me think personality things, potentially. I haven't seen the actual, I'll watch it. Yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of stuff coming out about things like this right now. Like professors, I know one was at Berkeley who said she had, and she was an ethnicity that she wasn't. I've read this a couple times now. Like people are sort of doing these things, I think, sometimes to get more attention on them. And it's obviously a lie. And to the degree you can keep that lie up, that's a lot of cognitive overload to be thinking about how to make sure you're always telling the same lie, right? Like, and that's usually what trips people up. And that's usually how people get caught is there's some sort of lie like that. And they accidentally say something they shouldn't, or, but yeah, it's hard to keep up a lie like that for a long time.
Well, and it was so sad to hear from her mom. Like her mom had this daughter who became famous and then was saying all these things that weren't true about her childhood. And it just, as a mom, my heart was broken for her mom. Like clearly there were a lot of issues, but I think you should watch it and we should discuss it because I'm so interested in your perspective on her now, like looking back and with this new information, it's like, wow, there was something going on there.
Yeah. I mean, potentially poor boundaries could also be like a part of that. Like people sometimes don't see clear boundaries between themselves and other people, and makes it much easier to take on attributes of other people. So I wonder if something like that's going on. I'll watch it.
Interesting.
And I'll let you know.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So anyways, I'm all wrapped up on my TV time. Now I'll probably go back to my normal life of not watching shows.
Well, those are good tips. I haven't seen any of those, so I'll watch them. And I'm in need of new TV, so that's great. Good timing.
Yeah. What's going on with you this week?
It's been a regular old week for me over here. One really funny thing came to light though this week. So as sort of a lead-in, I guess, to this episode on Disney World, we're going to Disney World in a few weeks with all my family, and it came as a big surprise to my kids that you guys aren't coming with us. Aww. They thought that your family was coming with us. And so my middle daughter was this week, she was saying, oh, I'm so excited. She's been packing her bags now for weeks and cannot wait to go. And she's like, oh, I can't wait to show Sarah and David and your kids around Disney World. And I was like, oh, sweetheart, well, they're not coming on this one. And she just was flabbergasted. She was like, wait, what? They're not coming? And she's like, why? Why would they not come? And I was like, I know, they are like family, aren't they? They should be coming. But it was so funny. And even my eldest was surprised. Yeah, it was really sweet. And but my youngest, she said they were all naming who they wanted to show around from your family. Aww. And my middle child said she wanted to show one of your kids around. And then my youngest said, and I want to show David around Disney World. I was like, well, that's your person, isn't it? Okay. That was so funny. So, yeah, we've been processing that as a family, that your family is not coming on this trip. No. And I think it's like a surprise because I think we've done our last two trips we've done with you. Yes. And so it's gotten sort of like we've gotten used to it. It's going to be strange not to have you guys there in some weird world. Yeah. Yeah, it was really funny.
That's so sweet.
So,
I love that. I mean, just like we kind of fell into this really fast romance, so have our children. And we went from 0 to 100. We went from like not knowing each other to doing stuff together like every other day.
I know. It's nice when that works out, and it's great when it happens between the two families.
Yeah,
So
it's just easy.
Yeah. So I told them, I was like, well, this episode's all about Disney World, and I'm going to be telling Sarah about why she should come on the next Disney World trip. And they're like, okay, you make sure you talk good about it. I was like, okay, I will. So, yeah, it was
so
really cute.
Sweet. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. Well, with that, welcome everyone to Platinum Perspective, the podcast about travel, beauty, luxury, and more. I'm your co-host, Sarah.
And I'm Megan. Sarah and I are best friends who put the work in to get the most out of life so you don't have to.
And today, like Megan mentioned, we are talking about Disney World. I'm super excited for this episode. Megan, of course, is a Disneyland and Disney World expert. Being from California, I never went to Disney World as a child. I've only been once, and it was before I had kids. There was a beauty conference in Florida, and I took my team to Disney World the day after the conference, and it was not planned.
Oh,
Yeah, but it wasn't planned
so
out.
fun.
It was so fun. We just kind of decided on the trip, like, we're going to do this. We were wiped from working a beauty conference, and then we just went. It maybe was a group of 4 or 5 women. We were in our 30s, and we had so much fun, but I really didn't learn much about the parks. We only went into the one main park, and it was so long ago that I wasn't even thinking about kids at the time or how it would be traveling with kids there. So I'm really excited for this episode to learn about Disney World, and I have lots of questions for you. But first, I have some rapid fire. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Which park at Disney World is your favorite?
Epcot, hands down. Most people, I think, would say Magic Kingdom, but Epcot has so many unique rides there. And they have it set up where you can basically go all the way around the world in terms of different countries, and each part of Epcot is a different country, and so it all has different restaurants, and you can drink around the world. I haven't done that before, but people go there and do that. So there's a lot going on there. I think it's just a lot of fun to go shopping at all the countries, different stores and things like that. So that one's my favorite. The one I want to spend the most time in is Epcot for sure.
Ooh, okay. I didn't even
That wasn't a fast response. But
that's okay. I have not been into Epcot. Okay, question 2. From a planning perspective, what is the biggest difference between Disneyland and Disney World?
The biggest difference is that there is so much to do at Disney World. It is a big place. There are a lot of parks, and there's a lot of things at Disney World that aren't in parks. And so making sure you get everything you want to get in on a Disney World trip, you have to basically just choose what you want to do and stick with it. Whereas Disneyland, you can pretty much hit up most things you want to do within a couple days. That's not true at Disney World.
How many parks are there? I don't even know this.
There are 6. So there are 4 regular parks and 2 water parks.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's large. It's big.
Wow. Okay. So question number 3 then. What's your favorite resort of all time within Disney World?
There are so many amazing resorts, and they all have fantastic themes. But the best one, hands down, in my opinion, is the Grand Floridian. It is like a palace. It's just gorgeous, breathtaking. It's beautiful to walk into. But I am going to go see a new resort this trip, and it's called the Riviera. It's their newest resort that they just built, and it's like a European style resort, and I've heard great things about it. So I'm excited to go check that one out. But for right now, Grand Floridian's my favorite.
Is the Grand Floridian comparable to the Grand Californian, which we stayed at Disneyland?
Yes, in terms of being deluxe, in terms of the service, it's amazing. But it's totally themed different. When you go to Grand Floridian eventually, because I think you will with me, you'll see it's just like it's much more elegant. It's a very elegant sort of palace style hotel. It's just gorgeous.
Ooh, okay. And then last rapid fire question. My favorite part of our Disneyland trip that you introduced me to was the VIP service. So do they offer that at Disney World? And is it the same experience? Is it worth it?
They do offer a VIP experience, and my answer is no, it's not worth it the same way that it's worth it for Disneyland. I know. That's my platinum perspective is that it doesn't add up to Disneyland's VIP experience.
Okay. I want to get more into that later on then. Okay. Well, Megan, do you want to jump into your background a little bit about your love for Disney World and growing up there, and then you have an upcoming trip, and what's the purpose of that trip?
Yeah, sure. So although I now live in California and I would call Disneyland my home resort, I grew up in Florida and grew up going to Disney World throughout my whole childhood. We would go probably yearly with my family. And I just had fantastic memories. I remember looking at my parents and seeing them be so carefree and acting like a kid. And I just, that will always stick with me as a special memory. And I hope to impart that same memory to my kids when they go to Disney World as well and Disneyland. There's just something very special about that. I grew up going there, and I've been now a few times recently since I've had kids, and I will say the experience has changed in many ways. And so I'm happy to go through how that has changed and how best to navigate. But it has become a harder place to navigate, I would say, unless you do your research ahead of time, in which case you can have a great time. That's why I think this episode is going to be a lot of fun to dig into, because there's a lot of ins and outs to consider when going to Disney World.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
And then this trip that you're planning right now, you're not going with us. You're meeting your family there, right?
Yes, that's right. So, yes, I am planning a trip right now for 16 people. It's going to be a family reunion down in Orlando. Most of us are staying at the Grand Floridian, and we will be hanging out there quite a bit. So that's the purpose of this trip coming up that I'm about to talk about.
Oh, so fun. One thing before we jump into the logistics of the trip, I've noticed Disney World has been coming up in the news a lot lately. And I've seen a few articles online. It seems a little political. Could you just give it a quick overview of what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the political front, there is ongoing lawsuits between the state of Florida and Disney World. And that's probably what you've seen a lot in the news, where they're suing each other about a bunch of different sort of logistics. I won't go into all of that here, besides to know that there's some friction there for sure. And I think most Disney fans are looking forward to the time where this won't be political anymore. We want it to go back to being the happiest place on earth, where we can just go and have a great time and not be thinking about politics and positions and things like that. So I would encourage anybody who wants to know more about any of that to go to the Diz Unplugged podcast and listen to their analysis of those. They've gone in depth, way more depth than I could, about what's going on and what it means for Disney's future and things like that, which I find interesting to listen to. But besides the political stuff, I think the current status of Disney World is that in this economy, they're experiencing a little bit more softness in terms of their who's coming for the summer, for instance. They're noticing that they are not booked up. They're having all these promotions come out to try and get people to come into the parks. They've also been making big changes to the way that you do Disney, and they've been listening finally to fans about what they should change. Some gripes that have been sort of ongoing for the past few years have been related to the COVID restrictions and the reason that they say that they put this park reservation system in place to begin with. You experienced this for Disneyland, where we had to make these park reservations. You had to check and see if there was availability before you bought your ticket. They've just announced that they're getting rid of all of that for Disney World in 2024 for most guests and date purchased tickets. So,
Oh, that's so exciting.
I know. Let's just get rid of that system. Nobody likes it. And you should be able to just buy a ticket for a certain date. And if it's there, you just buy it. And if it's not there, you know it's sold out. So that's what they're going to go to starting in 2024. And then they're bringing back Disney dining, which they got rid of back in the pandemic days. And everybody was wondering if that's going to come back or not. They just announced that they are going to bring it back in 2024. This isn't something you and I would probably do, but
What is it? I don't know what it is.
yeah, it's basically you pay a certain fee and you get, depending on what dining plan you purchase, you're basically prepaying for all your meals at Disney. And so it can be like one quick service and one sit down dinner per day, one snack. There's different combinations that you can choose for what you want. But it sort of gives people peace of mind when they go to Disney World that they've already prepaid for their food and that they don't have to think about the money, which, you know, when you're there at the happiest place on earth, you don't want to be thinking about money necessarily. So especially if you have a lot of kids, this is sort of a way not to be thinking about that potentially. Or if you want to have some spectacular sit down dinners and you want to prepay for it, there's a lot of reasons people sort of do this, but I think there's been some analysis. Is it worth it economically? Maybe not. You might be spending a little bit more money than you would. Yeah. I mean, so they brought it back. People are excited about it. I did this one time with my family at SeaWorld back in the day. They had a dining plan and my brothers ate their way through the park. It was one of those things where you could eat as much as you possibly want. And so they stopped at every single restaurant they could and filled up their plate. By the end of the day, we were all so full.
Oh, wow.
I think if you've got big boys, maybe you want to do something like this, but you and I probably wouldn't get the worth out of it because we kind of like to snack on the go. I'm good with some popcorn. Like I don't have to have all these meals all the time, but some people like it. And so they brought that back. Yeah. And then they are streamlining Genie Plus. We don't really exactly know how yet, but that's a welcome change that they've just announced. And they're going to make it more similar to the previous Fast Pass service that Disney World used to have. So back in the day, a few months in advance, you were able to choose 3 Fast Pass experiences ahead of time. And you got to schedule them and you knew what time they were. So this was good for people like you and I who love to plan and want things planned in advance. Less good for people who maybe like you and your team who just sort of showed up on the day and didn't have fast passes scheduled, things like that. So there's pros and cons to it, but for such a large park, having that old system seemed to make a lot of sense. So they're going to be bringing something like that back. The big difference is that we used to not have to pay for that service of getting 3 fast passes in advance, and now we will. So
interesting.
Not the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I think everyone's really excited to see some different technology occurring at Disney World because Genie Plus right now has some issues.
It's great that they've listened to their clients, and it sounds like they're making changes that people are asking for. And I just always love to hear that in a business because you know that they're putting the customers first, and that if you do speak out about what would make the experience better for you, the chances are that others would agree and you could actually enact change. And that's great to hear from any business.
Yes, for sure. And it's definitely a step in the right direction. They have a new CEO. He's actually the old CEO before Chapek. So we had Bob Iger. Bob Iger stepped down. We had Chapek come in. And Chapek came in and all the prices went up. The feuds started with Florida. Chapek got let go and they brought back Iger. Now Iger's making all these changes, or at least it's happening under his direction. So I think that this is like, a good turn for Disney to start listening to their fans again and stop nickel and diming and let us, have a more magical experience while we're there. And so I think Bob Iger's listening, and that's a good thing. So we're happy about that.
That's great. Okay, so you mentioned that there are 6 parks at Disney World, which I had no idea. Can you break down what those parks are and the vibe of them? And are you visiting all of them on your trip, or some of them? Or how would someone that's never been before choose where to go?
Yeah, it's hard. So we will be doing 4 of the 6 parks. We won't be doing either of the water parks. We had considered doing it, especially because we're going in the summer. But ultimately, we're only there for a week, and we want to have a lot of downtime to hang out by the pool. And so because of that, we're just going to do the 4 parks, and we're going to do 1 park a day. So we are going to do Magic Kingdom. So this is the first park. Magic Kingdom is basically the equivalent to our Disneyland park. So it's going to have a lot of the same rides, but it is much larger than Disneyland. And I think there's more rides in general at the park than there is at Disneyland. So there are some of the same rides, many of the same rides, but a few major exceptions. We have Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which is sort of a junior roller coaster. Barnstormer, which is like Gadget's Go Coaster. There's Country Bear Jamboree. So there's like a few different ones that you really want to make sure you get to if you're at Disney World versus Disneyland. And then the big ride that just opened up at Disney World is Tron, and it's a space-based sort of roller coaster that they just put into Tomorrowland, and it's supposed to be really exciting and fun. So I'm excited about that one.
This is the park that I went to. So does it have all the same lands that Disneyland has? Adventureland, Tomorrowland, Fantasyland?
Yes, we have Frontierland at Disney World. That's the big exception. And we don't have New Orleans Square. So other than that, they're very similar. And it's set up very similar in terms of where the rides are. Like Fantasyland is in the back of the park, just like Disneyland. So you can sort of know where the rides would be, but it is a lot more walking. It's just if you're walking and you have to walk through there, you're just going to get a lot of steps that day, way more than you would at Disneyland because everything's so condensed. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. There are a lot more rides on the Lightning Lane system. So you know how we were able to use Genie Plus at Disneyland to get on the Lightning Lanes? There's a lot more rides, especially like in Fantasyland at Disney World, that are on that system. So you can get them with Genie Plus.
That's nice. I know you love that because you love those Lightning Lanes.
I do. I do. I don't like to stand in line.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very similar to Disneyland. The next park is Hollywood Studios, and this is where Star Wars Land is. So actually that's another difference, I guess, between the two is Star Wars Land exists in Hollywood Studios down in Orlando, whereas it's a Disneyland park. We're out here in California. So it's a lot of the Star Wars Land with the same rides. The Guardians of the Galaxy ride at Disneyland, where you go up and get dropped by the elevator. At Disney World, it's called Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. So I don't know if you remember that old movie.
Yes.
Did you ever watch that, The Twilight Zone?
Yes, for sure. Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. So it's around that.
Yeah, it's like that's how it's themed. And that's how the one at Disneyland used to be themed too. They redid it for Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay. So it's kind of a creepy ride. It's fun. And then there's Toy Story Land, which has the Slinky Dog Dash is the big ride there, which is like a roller coaster that our youngest kids can go on. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. But yeah, again, this one just doesn't have as many rides. There's a few rides there, but there's maybe like 5 big rides there and you're done for the day. So you can do a lot of these parks in like sort of half a day and then go home back to the resort and go to the pool for the afternoon, which is sort of how we structure our days at Disney World, especially in the summer.
Oh, nice.
It's so hot.
Okay. So Hollywood Studios
Yeah.
Park, is that similar? I'm thinking about in LA, like Universal Studios, same kind of vibe, like all LA themed,
Um,
or not so much, more around Disney movies.
yeah, it was initially yeah, it was sort of like you're supposed to be going backstage to movies back in the
Oh,
day when they first
cool.
built it. Yeah, so it was sort of like a backstage, like there were different experiences you would go watch and be a part of, but there weren't a ton of rides back in the day, so they've built that up over time. And Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is here too, so they're starting to put more and more rides at Hollywood Studios. Universal Studios actually also has parks in Orlando, so
Oh, okay.
those are yeah, totally separate from Disney World parks, but in the same general location, easy to get to, a lot of fun, especially for older kids, more sort of thrilling rides. Whereas Disney's like the younger kid sort of experience. Yeah. And then there's Epcot, which I said earlier is my favorite. And this park has gotten better and better over time. So it used to be sort of boring and about science, which I love science, but a lot of the stuff is like learning about the land and sort of like boring experiences for kids, especially. It stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow,
Oh.
celebrating community, culture, human achievement, new ideas, new technologies. But there's a lot of cool rides here now. They've been working on Epcot for I would say like the last decade and really putting more and more rides in there. And now it's turned into a lot of fun as a park. I won't go into everything that there is there, but the big one for us is Frozen Ever After, which is like basically the only Frozen ride there is to go on in the United States. So
Oh,
my kids love the Frozen
cool.
movies. Yeah, and
Oh,
I know
do
yours
and
do
do
too.
I see here on the notes there's a Remy Ratatouille ride?
Yes, yeah, that one is
Oh,
so
cool.
cool. So it's the same technology as Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway with the trackless ride, but they also have smells. So you're like going through and you smell cheese and you smell bread cooking and things like that. So it's really cool. Your kids would love it, especially because they like rats. Um, yeah.
Oh, that sounds so cool. And then I think I had heard years ago that Epcot has the best food of all the parks. Do you agree with that?
Yes, yes, they do because they have all the countries, and so every country has an amazing, at least one amazing restaurant to go eat at, and even the places to stop by for like nibbles. They're really good. Like my husband loves like the Japan area for the green tea, ice cream, and things like that. Things that
Yum.
are pretty unique. But a way to sort of like visit those countries while you're at Disney World, it's a lot of fun.
Ooh, okay. I'm liking the sound of Epcot. It sounds like
Yeah.
nothing else exists like this. It sounds really unique. Really cool.
Yeah.
And then so that's
Yeah.
five if we're including the water parks. What's the last one?
The last one's Animal Kingdom. And
Oh.
yeah, and this one's, it's great. It's like basically a whole zoo, um, where you can go through like on a safari ride and they'll take you by giraffes and they'll take you by all these exotic animals. It's a lot of fun. And then they have totally different things there, like Pandora Land, which just opened a few years ago. And it's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's very out of this world, crazy looking, and the rides there are spectacular. And then there's Expedition Everest, which is like one of the best roller coasters ever. It's so much fun. And then there's a few other rides. Actually, Cali River Rapids is a lot like the Disneyland water ride that we walked by so many times, coming in and out of the Grand Californian. It's a lot like that ride. So you get drenched if you go on it. Yeah.
For older kids.
Yeah, basically, yeah, for older kids. And there's not a ton of rides at Animal Kingdom in general. There's a lot of animals to see, which is great for kids. But they're talking about changing some of that and adding new rides. And I've even heard rumors of maybe something Moana based going in there,
Ooh.
or Yeah, something to spruce it up a little bit because it does seem like it's the park that needs a few more attractions, in my opinion, and very easy to achieve within half a day. And in my experience, it's the hottest park. So for some reason, this park is really, really hot. So it's the one you would definitely want to do rope drop for and get out as soon as possible and go back to the pool.
Oh,
So,
that's good advice. Okay. So are you planning a full day in Magic Kingdom and Epcot and then a half day in Animal Kingdom and Hollywood Studios?
yeah, we'll probably spend maybe 3/4 of a day at Magic Kingdom total. And then do half days at the other parks. So, which means we won't get to everything at every single park, and that's okay. We've learned we can't get to everything we want to get to at Disney World, so we just have to have things we're aiming for and make sure we get those in. And then when we need to call it, we need to call it. And heat is a big factor. So when we're there, by noon, we're not only hungry, we're so hot, and we want to go get in the pool in Florida. So that's sort
Okay.
of our considerations for that.
What gosh, I've only been to Florida that one time. I don't even think I know, but like how hot is Orlando during the summer? What are we talking about here?
We're talking about upwards of hundreds. So with
Ah!
really high humidity, yeah, upper 90s into hundreds, it can get very, very hot. The saving grace, though, is that storms roll in pretty reliably in the afternoon. You can expect a sprinkle on, many days, which is nice because you need it to cool off for a second. But, kids have less tolerance, especially younger kids have less tolerance for that heat. And so we just know, get in there, get a few rides in, call that done and a success and moving on with life. Because if you try and stay and do all the rides with little kids, it's just, it won't be fun. They won't have fun and you won't have fun. And every hotel is going to have a pool. So definitely go do that in the afternoons for sure. So yeah, and then there's the two water parks. Yeah, and the two water parks, just to say that they're not regular water parks. Like you hear about water parks in general, I hear about water parks. I'm like, ew, no, yuck. These aren't like that. Disney does it Disney's way, and Disney's way is great. I mean, it's clean, it's fun. The rides are really fun. These are probably the only two water parks I would go to, besides maybe Universal's water park. I've done that one before too. But that's about it. Like otherwise I don't tend to do water parks because I'm just picky and I think they're gross.
That's good. That's good to know. In California, I grew up going to a water park, and I have such amazing fond memories of spending summers at this water park. And I think about it,
Yeah.
and I want my daughters to have the same experience, but it grosses me out now. It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
all the shared water and gross. But so that's great to know that there's
Yeah.
two options here, and it sounds like they're really clean.
They are clean, and you can elevate the experience by getting one of the deluxe cabanas. So I highly
Ooh.
recommend.
I like an elevated experience.
Yes, I know you do. Yes. And they're supposed to be amazing. We were going to, I think I even booked one for this past summer. We were going to go, and we ended up canceling it last minute. I was very bummed, but it's supposed to be great, and they serve you just like they would at the pool. So
Nice.
makes it nice and easy for little kids to cool off and relax in the middle of the day. In the theming, I can't stress enough. One's called Blizzard Beach, and actually it's amazing. Like you wouldn't imagine like a snow-based sort of water park makes a lot of sense, but it's perfect and it's a lot of fun. And with Frozen having come out like 10 years ago, they added all the Frozen characters now too to that park. So that's cute. Yeah, and then the other one's Typhoon Lagoon, and it's like a shipwrecked sort of boat, and it's based around that theme. But everything is so themed there that the kids just love it. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Okay, so if you're flying from California into Orlando, are the parks close to the airport? Do you rent a car? How do you get there?
Yeah, it's about an hour drive to get from the Orlando airport to the Disney parks and Disney resorts area. There used to be something called Magical Express, which was a bus that like always was shuttling between the airport and the Disney World resorts. They recently got rid of that about a year ago, and everybody was really upset about it. But now they have something called Mears Connect, which is basically the same service that you were getting with Magical Express. You just have to pay for it. There's one other called Sunshine Flyer. I don't tend to like these buses because they stop at so many resorts. And when you have young children, we just need to get from point A to point B and just do it. And so we did the Magical Express one time before they shut it down. It wasn't a great experience, in my opinion. And from now on, we'll be renting a car when we're there because you need to get to all the parks too. So we are staying at Grand Floridian, and we can get to Magic Kingdom using the monorail, or we can actually walk straight from our resort to Magic Kingdom. But that's basically the only park you can get to easily. The other ones you're going to need to drive to, and so drive and park. There is a bus service that takes you from all the different resorts to the parks. But again, you're on that bus for a really long time. You're waiting for people to get on and off. It's crowded. And it wastes precious time, in my opinion, even though it's free. Where, the kids start to lose it. It's like, well, you got to get home quick. You got to get in that car and just turn on the AC and get home quick. So my advice would be just get a car and park it. And again, if you're a DVC member, the free parking just came back, so you can park for free. But it is nice to have a car when you're at Disney World. Also, there's one other thing to go do, and that is, besides all these parks, there's something called Disney Springs, and that's the shopping and dining area of Disney World. And so you need a car to get to that as well. So another good reason to have a car when you're there. So we'll get a car.
Good to know.
And we'll be driving that around.
Good to know. Okay, so you mentioned, so you're staying at the Grand Floridian. Are there other great options for hotels? And have you stayed at other places before?
Yes, there are great options at Disney World, and I have stayed at some of them. I haven't stayed at all of them. But they Disney World delineates their hotels based on sort of status. And so there's deluxe hotels, there's moderate hotels, and then there's value hotels. The deluxe hotels would be the ones that I would recommend the most, and those would be the Grand Floridian, which is sort of their flagship.
You're going to get the luxury experience.
Yes. So if you want to elevate a little bit, have a special experience, the deluxe hotels will be the option that will provide something like that. Not that the other ones don't, but it's a different expectation and a different experience. So we're staying at the Grand Floridian, as I mentioned. There's also the Polynesian, which is amazing theming and beautiful and very like Hawaiian feeling, with great restaurant options on site. There's also the Contemporary, and the Contemporary is the one that the monorail goes through. And so the monorail goes to Grand Floridian, Polynesian, and the Contemporary, and then to Magic Kingdom. And so it goes in a circle, and you can get on and off at any of those ones. And so that makes those three, if you really think, you're going to spend a lot of time at Magic Kingdom, it makes staying at one of those three resorts really appealing because you don't have to drive and park. You can just take that monorail. Or if you're staying at Grand Floridian, you can walk. There's a walking path, which is even sort of nicer. Yes. And then there are three others that are deluxe, and those are the Boardwalk Inn, the Yacht Club, and the Beach Club. And they all sit around the boardwalk, and it's sort of what you might expect for a boardwalk. Like, it's themed just like a boardwalk would be, with games and ice cream parlors. It's very vibrant and fun over there. And you can walk to Hollywood Studios and Epcot from that area. So there's sort of two big areas where people will opt to stay. It's either staying in the on the monorail with one of those three deluxe resorts and proximity to Magic Kingdom. That works great for young kids because kids tend to like those rides at Magic Kingdom. But then as you get older kids, as your kids start to age a little bit, I've heard a lot of people say, well, that's actually when this other area becomes more interesting to stay at, the boardwalk, yacht club, or beach club, because then you get to go to the Epcot and to Hollywood Studios, which tend to have more thrilling rides for older kids. And so those are the options for that. And then there's one more deluxe resort called Animal Kingdom Lodge. So this is attached to the Animal Kingdom Park, and you have the availability to get a room there that has a savanna view, and you can watch giraffes all day. Yeah, and they come right up to your balcony.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I've never done that before, but that's definitely on my list of things to do because that sounds like so much fun. I think the kids would get a kick out of that.
Yes.
There's one other that I think would have been classified as deluxe, and it's the Star Wars Galactic Cruiser, which is an experience that Disney created where you basically get on a cruise like you would like a water cruise, but it's the Star Wars cruise. You get on for 2 days and you don't leave, and you're immersed in Star Wars land. There's all kinds of things you go do, and there's interaction and stuff. They just announced this week, like a couple days ago, that they're closing this, which is shocking because they just opened it a couple years ago.
Oh, wow.
So no one knows what they're going to do with it. The big problem with this is that it was about $5,000 for 2 people to do it for 2 nights. And once
expensive.
you go in there, like, it's
Can't leave.
expensive, and like you and I, like, yeah, you can't leave. It's
That sounds
dark because you're in
horrible.
space. Yeah, the rooms are
Oh.
small, and you must, yeah, and you basically, it's like forced participation. You must engage with the crew and complete tasks.
What a nightmare. I mean,
Yeah, no.
I'm not surprised to hear this is closing.
No, I mean, I think all the people who were Star Wars people, they got to do it maybe if they could afford it, and then they ran out of people who wanted to do this. And so there haven't been full cruises for months, basically. They've been they've been trying to get people to do it, and nobody wants to do it. So yeah, my hypothesis is they're going to probably close this and reopen as a regular hotel. But, sort of the weird thing is that normal hotels at Florida have like pools and they have amenities and things like that. This doesn't, because it's like a space hotel. So I'm very interested to see what they're going to do with it to make some money from it. But
Strange. I don't ever want to go on a regular cruise, much less a Star Wars cruise. They both sound terrible.
oh, you're speaking my language. I know. I've never done a cruise. I don't want to get stuck on a boat either.
Ugh.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. That was maybe a deluxe option that's now going away end of September. But in general, there's a lot of that could go through. There's 16 different resorts on property I could talk
wow.
about. And there are so many, and they all have an amazing theme that goes along with them. They're all a really cool experience. So I would say no matter where you're going to stay on property, make sure you're scheduling ample time to be at your pool and on that actual property where you're staying. And look for all the special offerings at your hotel, like art projects. They'll have special art projects for kids. They'll have Sunday yoga. There's drive-by character sightings. And then just speaking from the few resorts that I've stayed at that were on property, especially the Grand Floridian, they have so much staff there at the pool to play with the kids. So there are games all day with the staff. By the end of the week that we're there, they know my kids' names. My kids have won so many rubber duckies for for winning different games. We'll go home with like a big bag of rubber duckies that they've won. It's a lot of fun and great for parents because, sometimes I just want to sit back and have a pina colada or something like that and watch the kids play, but oftentimes they're pulling me into the pool and I don't get to relax. This is an experience where you get to sit back and your kids go play with the staff at the pool, and they'll keep them going all day.
This
It's
is
great.
I love this. This is so great to know. And did you say this is only at
Yeah.
the Grand Floridian, or is this at other hotels as well?
This is at other hotels as well, but I will
Okay.
say it's done the best, in my opinion, with the most staff and the most games at Grand Floridian. They just knocked it out of the park. And they also have like a water area where it's like a splash zone for little kids right next to the big pool. And the big pool has a big slide. And then there's all these, I mean, it's great, the games. And then my big piece of advice for this is on days where you know you're going to have a full pool day, go ahead and book yourself one of the cabanas like we did at Disneyland because it's like $300 a day and they serve you hand and foot again. And especially in Florida, having that shade and having a place to cool off is great. Having a little place to stay. So you can book those 60 days in advance. And I have done that for a couple of the days that we're going to be there.
That's good to know. I love to book a cabana pretty much any vacation we go on. I just love that service and having that private space. Now, you keep mentioning the Florida weather, and it's making me realize that I just don't know much about Florida weather. And so potentially our listeners don't either. When is the best time to go to Florida? Like, I know you're going in June. Is that the best time? Or would there be a better time? If you could plan it at any time in the year, when would you suggest people go?
I would say if you're a non-Floridian and not used to southern heat, that I would go in the spring or end of fall. The other thing to consider, so spring is beautiful there. It's warm, sunny. You're going to get your heat. You're going to get your vitamin D. It's going to be great. The fall, you would also get that, but you also have the potential for hurricanes. And so I remember one time we went, I know. One time we went in September and we were worried there was a hurricane coming through maybe 2 days before we were supposed to go. And we landed and I mean, the hurricane had done some major damage. There were trees down. There was a lot of cleaning up to do by Disney that they were working hand and foot trying to get it cleaned up for their guests, but a lot of stuff had happened that they had to clean up. And so I would say, your vacation could be completely canceled because of this. You know, if you only have a certain amount of time to take off and it's in September, this may not be the best option. Maybe find yourself at Disneyland instead, somewhere where you can have more predictable weather, because hurricanes come through and they just, it's tough. So
spring.
That would be
Spring.
the major spring, or again, I think I've said this in previous episodes, one of my favorite times to do Disney is for the holidays.
Oh, yes.
So I would also say do it for Thanksgiving and go and stay a couple days after Thanksgiving and wait to see all those Christmas decorations going up, or go for Christmas, or go any time in December. Oh, the Christmas experience at Disney World and Disneyland is so amazing. Like, it brings tears to my eyes, like, to see all the decorations that they do, and it's just all out. I mean, everywhere. It's just like Christmas threw up everywhere, and it's spectacular. So I would say that would be the best time to go.
Okay.
And then I wanted to make sure I mention, because we're talking about deluxe hotels, there's one more deluxe option to keep in mind for people who love Disney as much as I do and decide they want to go for the next 40 years. You can buy into DVC, which is Disney Vacation Club. And there are many, many DVC villas or buildings on site on all of these different properties. And so every property you go to, you can look and see, is there a DVC here or not? And if there is, you could buy into that hotel and say, I want to stay here for the next, however many years there is left on your contract. We should definitely do like a DVC episode later on so I can explain more about this, because it's not always a 40-year commitment. Sometimes there's a 20-year commitment. It depends on when the contracts first started being sold. But it's another great option. And even at DVC buildings on moderate properties, for instance, those DVC experiences will always be deluxe. So it's always a way to have an elevated experience every single time if you do the DVC option.
Okay,
so
good
I want to make sure I plug that in as something to think about. Yeah.
I think that DVC warrants its own episode because there is so much to that that I'm interested in. So more to come in a later episode on that. Okay, great information there on all the resorts and hotels that are offered. So logistically, did you say you're planning this for 16 people?
Yes, I am. Yeah, it's quite a lot to do, but for 16 people, including one infant, 1-year-olds, and then my 3 kids are 3, 6, and 8. So a lot of age variability here to plan for, lots of opinions to take into consideration when making plans. A lot of fun, yeah. Most of us are staying at Grand Floridian, staying on the DVC side because I'm a DVC member at the Grand Floridian. And due to the pandemic, the contracts I bought had a ton of extra points on them from previous years. So some of my family is able to stay there with me at the DVC side. And so that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, we're going to be staying over at the Grand Floridian, the DVC. And we're going to do 4 one-day tickets for us. And then the rest of my family is going to do just one day and just do Magic Kingdom because they've got little kids and they don't really see the need to do the bigger kid parks yet. So yeah. And then we booked a couple months out. So you can start booking all your reservations for dining and things like that 60 days out. In your cabanas for the pool. So those are things to keep in mind. And you want to make sure you do that exactly 60 days out, especially for the cabanas. There's also fireworks cruises you can book, and it's for yourself and up to 9 other people. Yeah. So you can go out on a boat at night and you can book something like that as well. 60 days out. So that's the first day that you're going to be there. So if you're staying on property.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were booking Disneyland for our non-VIP days, you had me waking up at 6 a.m. a few days in a row to book things.
Yeah.
And then did you say that for Disney World, you can book your whole trip, so you only have to wake up early one time? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. I just had to do it one day. It is nice. What it means, though, is I can book for my entire week on 60 days from the first day of my stay. Okay. That also means that overlaps with other people's trips. So people who are coming before me potentially can book the days that I'm there, especially the first few days that I'm there, ahead of me. So things like cabanas are actually harder to come by at the beginning of your stay rather than the end of your stay. So it's something to keep in mind. Yeah, and also dinner reservations. They had first dibs maybe a week ago or whatever the 60 days was before the start of their trip. But if their trip overlapped with my trip, then they had first dibs on all those reservations. So there's a little bit of planning and things to keep in mind. I was still able to get my cabanas. But I think, again, that's because this is a soft summer for Disney and they're not expecting as many guests. So I was lucky. Last year, I wasn't able to do that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Good to know. Interesting.
Yeah. And then we rent a stroller. There's, lots of stroller rentals there. We'll do the same thing we did with you and just get the double stroller. It's like $125 for a week. We go through Orlando Stroller Rentals. And they've been really reliable in the past, so I'd recommend them for that. So those are sort of like the logistics that have been in play. One big difference technologically is that we have to find each other on the app. My whole family has to find each other and connect our tickets, which makes it hard for certain individuals. My brother Eric, who has no Disney account, so there's no one to connect. I can't connect to him, so I have everybody on my app except for him. So come day of, when we're trying to book our Genie Pluses, you have to do all this in advance. Whereas like I just was able to see you at Disneyland and we just connected our phones and it quickly found each other. It's not the same for Disney World. So
that's so interesting. They're not using the same technology. They're not using the same platforms. That seems like a miss.
No, It does seem like a miss, especially when something works so well as it does at Disneyland. They should just use whatever Disneyland's using, because it took me a few hours to get my parents on, to get my brothers on, their spouses, if their kids have tickets, and then to connect with them and link to each other. And last year when we did this, we connected and linked to each other, we lost each other's tickets. And so my dad's ticket just poof went away. Like no one could find it, and it wasn't on anybody's app. So there's a lot of weird technology things going on for Disney World that don't go on for Disneyland. I would say Disney World needs to adopt some of the...
Well, and you would think, like, my mind goes to coming from an education background and then into business. A common successful business strategy is to keep the education similar throughout your different businesses, because if the consumer has learned one technology, consider them educated on it, and they should be able to follow into your other businesses with that same technology. So, wow, this sounds like a miss for Disney World and Disneyland. Hopefully they can get their act together and sync things up to streamline it.
Yeah, if by some unknown reason Josh D'Amaro is listening to this podcast and he's in charge of all the parks at Disney, the advice from us would be just use the Genie Plus system and the app that you have at Disneyland at Disney World. Let us just be educated on one system, because those of us who go to both, I mean, it's so much to keep in mind, and it's a hassle.
Yeah. Well, I am sure he's listening. So there you go.
If you want any more platinum perspectives, we'll let you know what they are, Josh tomorrow.
Yeah.
The other big thing is Genie Plus is different there too.
Oh, no.
Not only must we connect with one another ahead of time so that I can book everybody's Genie Pluses together, we have to buy Genie Plus between midnight and 7 a.m. of the day we're going to the park. Yes.
Wait, I'm sorry. You have to buy it while you're sleeping?
Yes. Yeah. Basically, those of us who are planning these trips don't get any sleep. So between 12 a.m. and 7 a.m., you must purchase your Genie Plus every single day that you're there. You can't do this ahead of time. And then you have to book at 7 a.m. Your first lightning lane through your Genie Plus. So the thing is that Genie Plus can sell out, and it has sold out in the past. So you really don't know if the day that you're there is going to be the day that it sells out ahead of time. And then at 7 a.m., you have to do the lightning lanes if you're staying at the hotel. You got to get up at 7 and book those. But you can do it from your hotel room, which is nice.
Wow.
And then Tron, I know, right? And then Tron is an individual lightning lane that you can purchase right at 7 a.m. also. Or there's a virtual line that you can join, similar to previous Star Wars, The Rise of Resistance, and I think there were some others that have done this in the past. But right now, because it's brand new, there's a virtual line, but the virtual line goes within seconds, I've heard. So you have to be on your phone. You have to be like right there at 7 a.m. to get that if you want it. Or you can purchase it, and I've heard that goes within minutes. Yeah.
Okay. And then what exactly is Magic Bands Plus? I've heard about this, and I'm not sure. What is it?
Yeah. So you might have seen maybe sparsely at Disneyland because they adopted it a little later than Disney World, but there are these wristbands that you can buy, and they allow you to do a bunch of different things in the park. So one is you put your park ticket on it gets connected to your Magic Band. So you can go in and out of the park using your Magic Band rather than showing your ticket through your phone. Same thing for your lightning lanes when you book it and then you want to walk through and you need to show your phone. The other way to do it is to show your wristband and then you swipe yourself through that way also. You can also get into your hotel room with it. So it will be linked up to your hotel stay if you're staying on property, and it serves as a key to your hotel room. And you can also use it to link to your PhotoPass pictures that are taken of you. So we were showing our phone at Disneyland. You can show this watch instead, and they'll just link it quickly like that. And then the new ones are the Magic Band Pluses. They used to be just Magic Band. Magic Band Plus is what they're moving to, although right now you can use both at Disney World. But Magic Band Plus has special experiences that you get to have while you're there. One big one is like during the nighttime spectaculars, your wristband will be doing all kinds of crazy stuff with all these lights and vibrations and stuff like that, along with the spectacular that you're watching.
Oh, that's cool.
And then when you're on, yeah, it's pretty cool. And when you're on certain rides, the wristband will interact at the same time. And so there'll be things that happen, especially when you're like, I guess, leaving the some of the rides, like Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, Guardians of the Galaxy, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. When you're leaving these rides, they light up and do all these special things. And you get vibrations and stuff, like some sort of like celebration or some sort of experience that you get to have with the watch if you have it. So it seems like fun, and I think this time we're gonna do it. We're gonna buy these for the whole family, and we're just gonna be swiping in and out. It's gonna be so much easier than showing my phone for everybody. Although, again, the ones in my family who don't do the bands, I'm still gonna have to show my phone for them, but. Whatever, at least some of us will have them and make it a little bit easier. And they work at Disneyland too. So
wonderful.
If we're going to be doing both.
Did you say that your credit card is synced to it, so you could just show that if you want to buy some food? You just show your...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you don't want to pull your credit card out, or like sometimes my 8-year-old wants to go grab something real quick, it'd be great for her to just go show her band and have it charged to our room instead of having... me go over there and pay for it and whatever else. So might be like a little easier.
I heard on a recent podcast I love, Girls Next Level, I heard Holly Madison talking about she went to Disneyland with her kids, and I believe they're around our kids' ages, and she talked about the Magic Band bracelets being so great because she's not fumbling through her purse and she's not having to pull out a credit card. Her kids can just show their wristband and get whatever snack they needed. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. I mean, that could be dangerous, but it's also good to know.
I know, I've thought that too. I mean, what if somebody else swipes it, or if your kid just wants to go on a shopping spree? I think you can put a limit. Like you can say like no purchases over a certain amount. At least that's the way it used to be. Yeah, so you could limit their accessibility, or just have the accessibility only on your watch and not their watches. That's another way they do it too. They can limit accessibility on the kids' watches. So it does make it a lot easier, and they're a lot of fun. Like it's like fun to go have a watch and be able to do all kinds of stuff. I used to have the Magic Band original before they went to the Plus system, and it was a lot of fun to do with the kids. And they used to be free, but now they're $35 to $45 depending on which kind you want.
Okay,
so,
good to know.
Yeah.
And then with regards to dining, so we talked a little bit about Epcot having some great food choices, but what are your favorite restaurants and restaurants that people might want to look at booking ahead of time?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many good restaurants. We are going to do Be Our Guest at Magic Kingdom. This is themed after the Beauty and the Beast movie. Aww. And it's really cute. Yeah, it's really pretty inside. It's sort of like a big palace, like the Beast's house was like sort of like a palace. So it's really cute. There's also Cinderella's castle you can dine at, and that's a lot of fun. And you get to meet Cinderella ahead of time, and that's sweet.
Oh, there's a restaurant in the castle?
Yeah, it's in the castle.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool. There's also one I'm really excited about is Topolino's Terrace, and it's at the top of the Riviera Resort, the one I told you is brand new. And I've heard great things from it. It's like apparently got an amazing view and great food. And then if you want to go to Epcot's got phenomenal. There's so much to. That's like a whole episode of food at Epcot. The Epcot food is amazing. But then if you want to have any experience like outside of the park, you sort of want a Disney experience, maybe just for dinner that night, and you did a pool day, you can go to Disney Springs, and you can go to Morimoto. There's Wine Bar George. The Boathouse is really, really popular. It's out on the water, and they have these cars that are like aquatic cars. They're like old-timey 50s looking cars you get in, and then they can drive you around the water, the lagoon and stuff like that. It's a lot of cute stuff there. Yeah, it's a lot of fun and great shopping. So make sure you have ample time to do Disney Springs, maybe even a couple days for dining and shopping.
Wow. Okay, good to know. I wanted to circle back. I had asked you in rapid fire about the VIP service, and that was my highlight of our Disneyland trip because it was something I didn't know
Yeah.
existed, and it was so worth the money to me. Now, you said in rapid fire that it's not worth it at Disney World. Can you share a little bit on why and what can we do if we're not going to do VIP service because it's not worth it? What can we do to seek out luxury and elevate a Disney World trip?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking about this. I did want to circle back to that. So the VIP experience at Disneyland, I think the things that made it so special was beforehand, before we even got to the VIP, we got to tell them all the dining we wanted. We got to tell them when we wanted it. We got to tell them what nighttime spectaculars we wanted to see. I got to tell them we want to meet princesses. We want this, like any random thing we wanted. They heard about it ahead of time. They scheduled it for us ahead of time. And that, for me, as the planner and the person putting in all the effort, that made it so special. None of that exists for Disney World. So the experience at Disney World is they do come pick you up from your hotel in a van, and they drive you backstage to whichever parks you want to do. So they did not, when I made my reservation, they did not take any of my dining reservations. They did not hear about what spectaculars I wanted or any special experiences. I did tell them we're big foodies, like we wanted to do Epcot and we wanted to do Hollywood Studios was what we did for our VIP day at Disney World. We said we are foodies. We love to try new, unusual foods. If there's anything cool, maybe seasonal that's coming out while we're there, that's, to try at Epcot, we'd love to stop along the way and we'd like to try it. And our guide came with somebody he was training. They picked us up in this old van that had no AC. There was all of us, I think there was 7 of us plus a double stroller. And so because the guy that he was training was with us, we didn't get to sit up front and like talk to the guide. He was talking to this guy this whole time. And then we were sitting in the back just like dying of heat exhaustion, like my whole family in this like extra large, long, old bus or car, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it. And we're just driving around like sweating so bad. And they did drive us into the back of Epcot, which was cool to see the backstage. We didn't have to go through security, which was nice. But basically that's where the specialness ends. They did get us on rides like they would at Disneyland. But it wasn't nearly as special and there wasn't the level of interaction with the guide, like with Kathy at Disneyland. We got to ask her all these questions and she was just so good with the kids and just so outgoing. Our guides were just not like that. They were just talking to each other the whole time. And we didn't stop for any special food along the way at Epcot. So we were starving by the time we got to Hollywood Studios, and they just dropped us off at this outdoor food arena and left for an hour. And we were just like outside in like 100-degree heat with all these kids standing in half an hour long lines to find our own food.
Oh my goodness. They didn't go get the food for you because Kathy, we were at Disneyland, we were able to say, oh, our girls want popcorn. And we were even able to say one notch up, our girls want popcorn in the Cinderella carriage that we can't seem to find anywhere. And within 10 minutes, here was Kathy with 5 Cinderella carriages full of popcorn.
I know.
And that right there was just like, yes, this is what we're paying for, and this is an elevated experience. So is it the same pricing at Disney World?
It was even more expensive.
What?
I want to say it was $700 an hour or something like that at Disney World. So, it was like a really, really disappointing experience. And you know how I am. I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, how much is it an hour? What are we getting in for the hour? And like, what is it worth it? For me, it wasn't worth it. I would rather just do Genie Plus and have my expectations just be lower. I'm not going to get on every single ride. And go have fun with my family and be able to plan it myself ahead of time rather than just go wing it with some guys that just talk to one another and aren't really there for like the experience of the guests. So
That's disappointing. Another thing that I loved about Disneyland VIP is that she had seats for us at every spectacular that we wanted. Just we didn't have to get there early. It was, 2 minutes before the parade started, 2 minutes before the nighttime show. And here's all of our front row seats, and we just were able to walk right in and sit down. So for Disney World, do you get front row seats for any of those shows or no?
I think at the time when we were there, there was one daytime parade at a park we weren't there. We weren't going to be at that day.
Okay.
And they said if we wanted that, we would just tell them the day of, we want that.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's how that would work.
Huh.
But there wasn't the level of experiences at Disney World either. So one other big difference that like I just thought of right now is that you see so many characters walking around Disneyland all the time. You and I saw so many characters.
So
and
many.
so
It was
special.
great.
Yeah, you have to plan character dining or a character experience at Disney World to see a character. So there aren't just characters walking around because at Disney World they get mobbed. At Disneyland they don't. They just walk around. You noticed them, but it's not like we run up to them. So you have to plan that at Disney World too in advance. So it's just another thing that's like I wish we could have VIP to plan something like that and say, oh, we want to meet this character. What would we go do to see that character? It seems like a miss for them. They could absolutely be incorporating that and making it very similar to the Disneyland experience, but they're not. So until they do, I would say skip that. And I think the best way to elevate a trip to Disney World is to make sure you're staying at a nice hotel and that you're spending a lot of time at that hotel. Make sure you're carving out time to be at that resort because there's so many shops, there's so many restaurants, there's pools, multiple pools. Sometimes at each resort that you're staying at, you want time to explore all that within your own resort and even have time to maybe go check out the Polynesian or go check out these other resorts that are around town at the Disney World Resort because there's just so much to see that's actually not in the parks. And so I think taking the time to do that would be the best way, I think, to elevate. And those cabanas, that would be the other way. Make sure you get some cabanas.
Yes. Okay, great. These are all, that's good to know about the VIP. Disappointing, but good to know. And then, so you have some good tips in there. And we talked a little bit about the heat in Florida. I'm wondering, with regards to that heat, are there any other tips? So go in the morning and spend lots of time at the pool, potentially plan for fall or spring. Any other tips that we should consider if we're not from Florida and traveling in?
Yeah, for sure. So remember how we got the extra magic morning hour or half an hour because we were
Yes.
staying on property at Disneyland? They do that for Disney World too.
Oh,
So
nice.
make sure you're there for that extra half hour in the morning because that's when it's going to be the coolest. Make sure you get the most out of your morning so that the afternoon could be by the pool like you mentioned. One big tip, one fun tip is like bring water bottles, a whole bunch of plastic water bottles, and throw them into the freezer. And then pull them right out from the freezer and put them into your stroller. And throughout the day, they're going to melt pretty quickly. And then you'll have nice cold water. Because the water bottles, if you don't do that, they end up being pretty warm by the time you need them.
Oh, that's a great tip.
Yeah, so definitely freeze those water bottles and throw them in right before you leave. And then you can see fireworks right from our balcony. So make sure you do research if you want to have like a fireworks view or something like that. Find a resort like the Grand Floridian or the Polynesian where you get to have that view. And make sure you have a balcony, and then you don't have to be in the park to see fireworks when you're at Disney World. You can be, putting your kids to bed and staying up with a glass of wine and watching them with your husband, or maybe your kids stay up and then go to bed right after, but it's so much easier than being in the park for fireworks and then having to go home afterwards with little kids. And then I wanted to mention that powder sunscreen that you gave to me.
Ah, Colorscience.
There you go, Colorscience. I want to make sure I mention that because in the heat of the summer, you sweat a lot, and liquid or lotion sunscreens can run in the eyes. And this powder sunscreen would stay put more, I think in a better way. So I would say keep one of those on you at all times, reapply often, and try to stay out of the sun as much as possible.
Good to know. Oh, that sunscreen is amazing. I linked it last week on our Instagram, but I'll go ahead and put that out there again for anyone who missed it. We have a special link that goes over to Instagram, and it's for the Colorscience Mineral Foundation. It comes in a couple different shades, and we love to use it on ourselves and on our kids. It's fantastic. Well, this has been so much information that honestly has got me pretty excited to visit Disney World sometime.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I think we're gonna have a recap episode on your trip so we can get any more information, and then maybe after that we should plan our own family trip out there.
I think that would be so much fun. Yeah, we'll do it on an off summertime so that you're not dying of heat and melting.
I'm not sure. I'm like, I don't think I know how to function in humidity.
No. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
My kids are a wimp in the heat too, but we'll figure it out, and it sounds like it would be well worth it. So as far as 3 takeaways on Disney World, it sounds like it's a lot bigger. It takes more planning. And I love how you had said you want to plan on things not going exactly how you want or plan it, and just kind of pivot.
Yes. Just be flexible.
Be flexible. And then there's a lot of options. So I love how you recommended doing your research ahead of time and plan.
Yes. Plan ahead as much as possible, but be just ready if you need to change things last minute, that's okay, and have that in the expectations.
Perfect. I love that. And then unfortunately you can't it's not suggested to elevate with their VIP service, but you can elevate with where you're staying. So staying at one of the deluxe accommodations, and plan to spend a lot of time at that resort.
Yeah, you got it, Sarah. Those are 3 big takeaways, I would say. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun unpacking all of this with you and talking about it with you. Everyone, please rate, like, and subscribe, and catch us on Instagram and Facebook now at Platinum Perspective Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.